Welcome to the podcast today, book nerds. Today we're going to be interviewing Naz Kutub. He's the author of The Loophole. A little quick synopsis here. Your wish is granted. This young adult debut is equal parts broken-hearted love story, epic myth retelling, and a world journey romp to find home. Sai is a timid 17-year-old queer Indian Muslim boy who placed all his bets at happiness on his boyfriend Farouk, who then left him to try and fix the world. Sai was too chicken to take the plunge and travel with him, and is now stuck in a dead-end coffee shop job. All Sai can do is wish for another chance, although he never expects his wish to be granted. Can't wait to get into this interview today, and without further ado, let's talk to Naz about the story. All right, book nerds, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm joined by Naz, who's the author of The Loophole. Welcome to the podcast today, Naz.
Hi, Narry. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So to kind of get a little bit more in-depth about your rating and things like that, can you give us like a nice synopsis or summary about your book?
So The Loophole is my young adult debut novel. It's about a 17-year-old gay Muslim kid who gets kicked out by his dad, and he decides that since he's got nothing left, he's going to go on a journey to try and find his ex-boyfriend. And so he goes on this world, travel thing, and he's accompanied by this alcoholic genie and the three wishes she had granted him. And together they travel and they go on a madcap adventure together, and they discover their strengths together. Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty much it, yeah.
Gotcha. So for the story itself, I'm kind of curious. It's a pretty unique kind of storyline and everything, especially with like the characters' backgrounds. What kind of inspired you to write it?
I wanted to write a journey book, and just to showcase a teenager, a queer teen, just being thrust into the open world and trying to figure out how to grow up as quick as possible. Because not a lot of teens have the luxury of taking their time to grow up. Some teens are sadly, forced to become an adult at just such a young age. I was kind of inspired by me being homeless at 17 when I was just a silly little kid. I ran away from home, and then I decided I'm just going to try and figure out how to be an adult when I was 17. And so I ran away from Singapore and I ended up in the US, and the last month and a half I was just like sleeping on the streets.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wanted to showcase that this book is not as depressing as that experience was, because my main character Syed gets flown around in a private jet, and he gets to stay in like mansions and amazing places that the genie has access to, whose name is Reggie, by the way. So he gets to have a somewhat fun experience, even though he's homeless. So, which again, not a lot of queer teens out there don't get to experience if they get, kicked out of home, which still happens. I think in America and the Western world, a lot of people here take it for granted. It's not an issue to even consider, but in a lot of countries out there, it's, it still needs to be talked about. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how it has kind of that extra representation and everything in there. And I guess you could even say a little piece of your own story.
Yeah, it has a lot of myself in it. Has my family in it, my mom, my dad, my sister. Again, me running away from home, similar parallels, the
Mhm.
getting kicked out, my terrible relationship with my dad, and the countries I had visited. So in this book, he travels to London, Istanbul, and then to a final location that you'll find out if when you read the book. So yeah, all in search of his ex-boyfriend, because they had broken up like 3 months before that, and the ex decided he needed to find himself. And so this is Syed trying to find him and trying to bring him home so they can have a home together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I love that. It's kind of like a little bit of romance, a little bit of a journey kind of
Yeah.
slice of life.
Yeah, so there are three timelines in this. There's the present day where he's, single and, kicked out and going on this journey. There's a recent past,
Mhm.
the previous year timeline between him and his ex-boyfriend. You see them like, meeting each other and being on this romantic journey together and how they fall in love with each other. You find out why they break up. And also the third timeline is the genie's origin story. So all three stories converge by the end of the book. All three timelines, I mean, yeah.
Awesome. And as I was kind of reading a little bit of the synopsis of the book and everything, I guess it's kind of described a little bit as a kind of myth retelling.
Mm.
So with the genie and everything, is that kind of inspired by your background or growing up in Singapore?
So I decided to do a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice, this old myth. I mean, obviously.
Gotcha.
It was about this man and his wife, and she dies, and he decides to go to the underworld to try and get her back. And he meets the Lord of the Underworld, and he plays beautiful music on his flute. And so the Lord says, I'll let you have her back. All you have to do is walk out of hell and don't turn back once. She'll follow you just a few steps behind. And if you make it all the way out, she will be with you. If you turn around, then she'll, come back. I'll retrieve her back to my clutches. So it's loosely based off of that, but with a genie thrown in. Because I grew up Muslim, and that's part of Islam, the whole jinn thing. So yeah, I think I wanted to do a mishmash of, myths and folklore. So the loophole came out of that mishmash.
Nice.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
personally kind of gotten to travel a lot throughout your life?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate, even though I was homeless a long time ago, I did do really well. I worked in IT, hated it, but it paid really well. So I got to travel all around the world. I've been everywhere really. So I I know I've just been very fortunate, and now I get to write instead of working in IT. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, when did you first kind of decide that you wanted to go into writing and this was something that you wanted to pursue?
Oh gosh. So in 2007, I decided, because I had just moved to LA like a year before, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be a screenwriter like everyone in LA. Los Angeles has 1,000,001 screenwriters, and I was about to be one of them and add to the pool. And I did that for 4 years until I found out, like, it's just really not conducive to a brown person. I was never going to get any screenplays sold. And so I pivoted and I was like, oh, this is really scary, but I want to keep writing. Am I willing to try and write a novel? So in 2011, I decided, let's just try, see if I can write a book. I can always give up and never go back into writing. I'll just stick to screenwriting. And so I took the final screenplay I'd written and I decided to, just as an experiment to see if I could do it, I reverse adapted it. I took 1 page of screenplay and forced myself to write 3 pages of prose. That took 19 months, and I actually wrote 100,000 words.
Wow.
So yeah, so almost 2 years, I wrote an entire book, which was just terrible. It was just pure caca. So I then realized I could write a book. So then I decided to learn how to write a book. So that, even though I had experimented and I was capable, it's kind of like, you want to go skydiving, but you're afraid to do it, but you just want to see if you can do it, and you do it and you've done it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm capable of not being afraid of heights. So I was capable of not being afraid of writing a book. And so then I, went to conferences. I learned what good writing can be. I found out about voice, and people like, oh, you have to have a voice. I'm like, what the hell is voice? And so I had written another book when I found out about this voice thing. So it took me a total of 6 novels before The Loophole was my 6th full-length novel. So it took me about 7 years after I started writing novels to get an agent, and another close to 2 years to sell this book. So it's been quite a journey from then. So I guess I started in 2007 with screenplays, 2011 novels, and then 2022 my first book came out. Yeah.
That's
But I never
crazy.
gave up. I didn't want to give up. I enjoyed writing. I loved writing so much. So
And now here you are with your
I
book and
know.
everything. It's awesome. What a
Yeah.
journey.
It has been it's been quite a long journey.
That's
Yeah.
incredible though. Have you like since you've gotten into writing and like being in LA and everything, have you had like any mentors or people that have kind of really inspired you and
Ooh. So the whole voice thing, I I thought, and I think a lot of new writers think this, I thought good writing was like complicated writing, like the wordiest words, the biggest vocabulary, the most impressive, most beautiful lines of writing you could put down on the page. A paragraph could take you a whole hour to like drum out. And then when I found out, I just kept reading and reading. I was like, what is this voice thing? What is voice? And I finally discovered what voice was when I read Laurie Halse Anderson's Twisted. It was a YA. And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh,
uh,
that is voice. And so after that, I decided I needed to find I discovered there are different things that amount to a voice, right? There's the character's voice, there's the narrative voice, and then there's your voice as an author. All of that adds up to this flavor that becomes your writing, that is the voice of your writing. So that Laurie Halse Anderson was so crucial to helping me without her knowing. I every time I've met her, I'd be like, I will always be so grateful to you for teaching me about voice, even indirectly. Because without you, I would never have gotten this book published, or my writing would have never gotten anywhere. So yeah, she's just been instrumental just from reading one book of hers. And
I
she's
love
such a
that.
wonderful human being. So yeah.
So you've already like you've gotten a chance to meet her in person and everything too now that you're
Yeah. Yeah, I met her at a conference several times, and she's always been so kind. She's always been willing to listen, and she wasn't, I don't think I'm stalkerish, but she's never ever felt, I hope she's never felt bothered by, me being so appreciative of it. Yeah, she was just so kind. So yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious too, like other than writing and kind of doing these stories and doing like the screenwriting stuff, do you have like a favorite place that you like to come up with your stories or a favorite place that you like to kind of sit down and write?
I used to like force myself to go to like coffee shops and libraries and like be outside and write outside. But then I realized that, the more I realized and acknowledged that I have ADHD, the more I realized that those environments are so detrimental to my productivity. um, so I just stay at home on my couch, on my desk. And it's hard for me to be in a public environment and try to write. My brain will always be distracted by something. Sometimes I have to hide my phone outside in the living room, so I don't go back to it to check on stuff. Um, I know a lot of people need that kind of like white noise. I try to listen to something called trailer music. It's just 2-3 minute pieces that that have no vocals, just to get me in the mood of writing the scene. So that's like my favorite thing, just to blast that music. But mostly I'm just so comfortable writing at home. Yeah. And I'm a speed drafter too, so I try to write really quickly, just vomit out a draft, and that I try to do within a week. So it's hard to do that when I'm outside.
Gotcha. I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many distractions. I feel like,
So
especially
many.
if you're in a cafe and there's
Yeah.
food.
I know, right? You hear the strangest noises, people talking next to you. So, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Home,
definitely.
my favorite place.
I mean, like outside of writing and storytelling and things like that, do you have any other hobbies or things that you like to do?
Um, Gosh. Video games. I think video games are a good escape. But it also sometimes I find the most interesting stories in narrative games. So video games, I think, help with my attention deficit,
Mhm.
and just keeps my brain stimulated, I think. But I'm also a fan of not doing anything, just literally lying around and just watching TV. I think reading and writing take up so much brain power. Just the thought of summoning a plot idea and working through the kinks and finding plot holes can be extremely exhausting to the brain. Sometimes just letting my brain do nothing is the best thing. So I think relaxing is a huge hobby of mine. So my partner is quite hilarious because he's always wanting to go for a walk, and I'm like, I'm fine. Or a hike or whatever. I'm like, I'm good. I'll just, hang out here on the couch or in bed. So, but we go to the gym together. So I think that's also one thing that keeps me busy.
Oh, it's nice. Kind of gets you out of the house once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I don't call it a hobby. I just call it a distraction from writing. A good distraction. So yeah.
I hear that. I mean, I'm kind of a homebody myself, so I can relate.
It's fine. It's totally fine. I'm a proponent of it.
Just to kind of wrap up for the loophole and everything, where can we find your writing? Where can we find your books? Any social media sites that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm on social media. Usually as Naz Kutub, because I'm the only Naz Kutub in the world, apparently. So far, and I have a website that I'm revamping, so that's kind of broken. I just started it today, but things will pop up on it randomly. And I will be going to different places. Like next month, I'll be going to Portland and Charleston. Portland for the Portland Book Festival,
Nice.
Charleston for Y'all Fest, and then I'll be going to NCTE, which is in Anaheim, which is a convention for teachers. So that's going to be very exciting. So yeah.
Awesome. That's super exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah.
Oh, I wish you safe travels and everything. It's been
Thank
such a
you,
pleasure
Nari.
talking to you.
Yeah, it's good chatting with you too. Thank you for having me.
Of
Sorry I didn't
course.
get to chat with Jean, but next
No,
time.
it's all good. I mean, she said before I even got all the stuff for the interview and all the info together, she was like, "You're gonna love him. He's so sweet. He's like the nicest person." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited."
Oh, she's so sweet. Thank her
She
for
is.
me.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Definitely will. Awesome.
Good.
Thank you so
Right.
much. It was
Cool.
perfect.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this.
Of
Thanks for taking the
course.
time.
Yeah, safe travels and everything. I hope you
Thank
have a great
you.
time at all the conventions, and we'll talk to you later, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
It's been such a pleasure talking to Naz today and getting to know him and to talk about his story, The Loophole. And Naz, before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners?
Hi, I'm Naz Kutub, and you're listening to the JeanBookNerd podcast.